Welcome to Spotlight on Jackson County. We are continuing our conversation from our last show with Mr. Ron Vincent. Ron is a candidate for the 4th Congressional District in the state of Mississippi. We ran out of time on the last show, so I promised Ron we'd come back with another, and that's exactly what we're doing. So don't touch that remote. We got a lot of more interesting information for you. Ron, welcome back. I appreciate you taking the time to do another show. I know you're a busy man. I know that running for office is not an easy thing to do. But you obviously feel like somebody's got to do something.
Absolutely. Somebody has to do something, and it's not getting done now. And somebody has to meet the people and hear their concerns, let them voice their concerns, and that's not happening now. Our congressman has been in Washington for 3 years and has had 2 town halls, and they were pretty well scripted.
Well, speaking of that, would you be willing to have a debate with Congressman Palazzo, hopefully on this station?
Absolutely, I would love to. I have publicly challenged him to it, and this would be my preferred venue, WKFK, on the coast. I have written him letters, I have written him emails, I have sent him faxes, and telling him he can pick the time and the place of the debate. And so far, it has just fallen on deaf ears. I also know from other news media outlets that Chris McDaniel has challenged Cochran to a debate, and he's had the same result.
No answer.
No answer. And and I still have not heard back from Stephen Palazzo, but I am willing to have a debate with Stephen, even if he doesn't show up, with an empty chair, for example, a la Clint Eastwood.
Okay.
And I would be glad to do that. I've got a whole bunch of questions that I would like for him to answer, and we'll bring those up. And I certainly hope he would be here to answer the questions, because it's things that the people in the South Mississippi need to know about and want to know about. And so we can settle all of that in a debate. There are a whole lot of questions about what he's doing in Congress that remain unanswered. I would like to give him a chance to defend his vote on extending the Patriot Act. Would like to give him a chance to defend his vote on the omnibus budget bill that just passed, where he cut the benefits of our retired veterans, including the disabled veterans. Their benefits are cut. We have raised the benefits for the federal civilian workers, and we're going to try to balance the budget and cut spending on the backs of our veterans. That's unconscionable. We'd like to give Congressman Palazzo a chance to explain why he voted for that. So that's some of your issues that you have with Congressman Palazzo that you would bring out and discuss with him if he is here in the studio, or without him in a debate. Absolutely. He has promised us that he would never vote for federal funding for abortion, but he's done that. He continues to do that. He's also claimed he wants to balance the budget responsibly. He's not doing that. He has voted for every continuing resolution that has come through Congress. He voted for the omnibus spending bill that just came through. Why you do that? I mean, I would like to give him a chance to explain why he's actually doing that. Why did he vote to extend the Patriot Act? Why did he vote for the National Defense Authorization Act? Those are critical, critically bad to this country, and we don't need that. I mean, those need to be repealed and rolled back.
Well, we've got an IRS that's out of control, who's investigating organizations that it's absolutely illegal, and the president says there's not one smidgen.
I would remind you what actually ended up forcing Richard Nixon out of office. Everybody knows about Watergate, but that was not the thing that brought him down. Richard Nixon had an enemies list, and he got the IRS after his enemies on his enemies list, and that was the thing that was going to force his impeachment, and his impeachment was pending, and so he resigned rather than be impeached. But it was over the abuse of the IRS, just like, in fact, not even as bad as our president is doing it now. And also, I heard on TV Pat Goodell. He's a Democrat pollster he's one of the good Democrats. I've got a lot of respect for Pat Caddell. And Pat Caddell said that the Republicans are not interested in pushing back against the IRS and their attacks on the Tea Party because they want to attack the Tea Party. They're quite happy if the IRS is attacking the Tea Party. So, our Republican Party bosses are just as bad as the Democrats are in this area, and they need to be brought to heel on those issues too.
That is absolutely illegal. We got another situation that I'll just bring up briefly, and we'll get back on subject. Benghazi. Benghazi is American citizens lost their lives, an American ambassador lost their lives, and we get people on talk shows saying, oh, it was because a mob formed and they were mad because somebody had produced an anti-Islamic video. We now know that it was an absolute untruth.
Absolutely. And Hillary Clinton needs to be held accountable for that. She was, after all, Secretary of State. And to be fair, she said, the buck stops here. She took responsibility for it, but nothing ever happened. And then when she testified before Congress, she said, what does it matter? It matters a lot. 4 Americans are dead, and we still don't know what happened. And we want to know why they didn't go to their aid. Why did the government not send people to aid them? In fact, nobody's ever answered the question why Christopher Stevens, our ambassador, was in Benghazi in the first place. That's not where our consulate is. Our consulate is in Tripoli. But he was what was he doing down in Benghazi? And we don't know that yet. And yesterday, Karl Rove was on giving us lectures that we should not hold Hillary Clinton accountable for Benghazi, because she will be running for president, I'm sure. And they're already, that's the reason we're in this problem, Doug. When we knew more about Eric Snowden, the NSA leaker, in 5 hours than we know about Barack Obama after 5 years of presidency. What's wrong with this picture? And the reason that Obama has been elected is because nobody has told the story about who he is, where he came from, and what he's done. Nobody has talked about Barack Obama's relationship with Bill Ayers, the terrorist who is got off on a technicality. It was Bill Ayers' father that paid for Obama's Harvard education. That never came out. His association with Reverend Wright, that's never come out. The Reverend Wright of the famous GD America quote that everybody has heard, that's never come out. And it's the Republicans' job to put that stuff out. They could put commercials out on that. And the reason Obama got elected was because the American people don't know who he is. And that's the same thing that's happening now with Hillary Clinton. The Republican Party bosses are trying to sweep Hillary's wrongdoings under the rug. And that's unconscionable. That needs to change.
Well, I think the polls prove that over 60% of the people in the United States don't trust the government.
No doubt.
Congress has one of its lowest ratings in history.
Absolutely.
And with good reason.
You heard what Jay Leno said about that, didn't you? Jay Leno quoted a poll that asked people, how do you view Congress's doing, or do you believe that Congress is doing a good job? That was the poll. And only 3% of the people polled admitted that they said that they thought Congress was doing a good job. Jay Leno pointed out the fact that the margin of error on the poll was 4%, so it may be that nobody thinks that Congress is doing a good job.
Also, I saw something where a man on the street asked people, which one would you prefer, the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare? And people are saying, well, the Affordable Care Act because it's more affordable.
It's incredible. It absolutely is incredible.
It's scary that those people are actually voting in elections. I mean, you got to inform yourself, and you've got to.
Low information voters are a big part of the problem.
There's one thing that I really want to touch on that a lot of people in Mississippi, in South Mississippi, or Americans in general, there's an all-out assault by this administration on the Second Amendment, and that is the right to keep and bear arms, which is guaranteed in the Second Amendment to the Constitution. And I think that was written in there by our founding fathers because that is the only way that the government can be held in check, is that the population is armed. Now, if you look down through history, every person that took control of a country, and I'm really being careful with my words here, one of the first things they did was disarm the population.
Absolutely.
How do you feel about the Second Amendment rights to keep and bear arms?
Boy, I got a lot to say about that. The news that came out just today was, in Connecticut they had passed a law that they have mandatory registration of your firearms, and that's not going over too good because what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to take your firearm down to the police station so they can look at it and record the serial number and the people in Connecticut are ignoring that, and that's a good thing. A lot of times you hear the liberals would like to tell us that the Second Amendment applies to the National Guard. That's what it's all about because there's a mention of the militia in there. Well, the Constitution was written back in the 1700s. It was the militia that fired the shot heard around the world at the North Bridge. And those were people who had their own guns. That was the militia. And that was a long time before the National Guards were established by the states. So the Second Amendment absolutely applies to individual ownership of weapons. And it says shall not be infringed. And it's already being infringed enough. And Obama tried to get with the UN Small Arms Treaty, he tried to backdoor that.
Only four
senators.
Votes.
4 senators was the only thing that kept that from happening. And a lot of people thought that if he got that through, that they would be confiscating our guns because that's what the UN treaty entailed, was confiscation of guns. So, and it may be that the Second Amendment is the only thing that's keeping us free today, because they're going to be really, really careful about cracking down on our guns. And that's when, in my humble opinion, that's when the shooting's going to start. If Obama and the federal government comes down to take away the guns, that's not gonna happen. First off, it's absolutely illegal. I was at a Tea Party meeting up in Lincoln County a few weeks ago, and the sheriff of Lincoln County spoke, and he brought that subject up. And he said, I understand a lot of you in the audience are afraid of the federal government coming in and taking away your guns. He said, in that case, I invite you to move to Lincoln County, because it ain't going to happen here. And I've talked to Sheriff Rigel up in Lamar County, and Sheriff McGee up in Forest County, Sheriff Hodge over in Jones County, and they all feel the same way. We're not going to sit still for them taking away our guns. It is our right. It's worked well, and it needs to stay where it is. And
it's
that,
also, go ahead.
It's like I say, it's one of the main things that I think that's keeping us free, because they just don't dare to do a lot of things because the people won't stand for it.
There's also an assault on the First Amendment, your right to free speech. You're not allowed to say anything bad about Barack Obama within so many feet of a speech or an appearance by.
Or you get in trouble with the Secret Service, absolutely.
The NSA spying. We don't know who's watching, who's listening, who's looking at, who's recording, we don't know. We don't know. And why? Why? I'm not a terrorist. I've never done anything against this country. God, I've only had one speeding ticket my whole life, and I'm almost 61 years old. So why do they feel the need for that? They are the ones that are making us uneasy with them by their actions, not ours.
Absolutely. And I think they fear us, and that's why they want to keep tabs on us. Because what they're doing is just as wrong as it can be. And that's part of being able to control the people. If you look at all of the totalitarian governments around the world, every one of them, whether it's Nazis or communists or whoever it was, with the KGB or who it was, their main goal was to keep tabs on the citizens and find out everything about what they were doing. And so this falls into line with that. The only reason that the government needs to know so much about us as if they're intent on controlling us. And that's the wrong way to go. This should be a government of the people, by the people, for the people. This should be bottom up. As it says in the Declaration, this should be a government whose authority is based on the consent of the governed. And that's not what we're doing now. They're trying as hard as they can to take away all of our rights.
Well, you promise me and our viewing audience that you will fight to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Absolutely. I will stand on my soapbox and yell to the high heavens about some of these issues, because they need to be brought out. And one of the reasons that the Democrats and the progressives are getting away with all of the things they're getting away with is because nobody is pushing back. We don't have enough people standing up and saying, this is wrong. There's more and more people standing up. It's happening. We're winning. We're moving forward. This is, we're going forward great guns. There's been a lot of pushback against Common Core, for example, and those people are having an effect. They're even in New York State, as liberal as they are. They're pushing back against Common Core up there, and that liberal bastion. And so we are having an effect. The Tea Parties, the liberty-minded people, are having an effect, and they're causing things to happen, and they're causing the leadership to fear us, and that's a good thing. That's what they should be doing.
Okay, we've already run through the break, so I'm making an executive decision that we will not run the mid-break in the show, and I've got another question I need to ask you.
Because it is what's called an off-year primary. There's no president on the ballot this year, and typically what that means is that people don't show up to the polls to vote. The last off-year primary we had was in 2010, and in the entire 4th District, with a population of 700,000 people, 400,000 registered voters, the entire turnout in the whole 4th District was 27,000 votes.
That's appalling.
That's not, listen, in 2006, the year before that, it was only 6,000. So that is our opportunity. If we want to defeat these incumbents, this is the time to do it in the off-year primaries, because if we get our people out to vote, we can win. And I'm pretty sure I can get at least 42% of the vote, because that's exactly what Joe Tedjardine did in 2010. And Joe Tedjardine didn't have 2 dimes to rub together. It was only grassroots, Tea Party, 912 project support. That's all he's had, and he got 42%. And I'm sure I can do at least that well. By the end of this month, I should be endorsed by all of the Tea Party groups in South Mississippi in the 4th District. And I have been given a verbal. In fact, tonight, I'm going up to Picayune to pick up an endorsement from the Pearl River Patriots up there. And the only Tea Party group that I have not been endorsed by already is the We Surround Them 912 project in Jones County, and I'm speaking to them next Monday. And so they will make a decision after then. So I've got really good grassroots Tea Party support. The other thing that's happening is Chris McDaniel has really created a lot of excitement in South Mississippi, especially in South Mississippi. And he's going to have some coattails, because there are a lot of people that are going to turn out. And like I say, this is a low turnout election, and this is all about turnout. And Chris is generating enough excitement that there's going to be a lot of turnout. And the people that turn out to vote for Chris are going to be much more likely to vote for me. The people that turn out to vote for me are much more likely to vote for Chris, because our mission and our message is the same. We have to get rid of the incumbents. The incumbents are causing us a lot of problems, because the incumbents are making decisions in the Congress supporting party politics and not doing what's best for the American people, and that's got to change.
So what I hear you saying is you're not afraid to be associated with the Tea Party?
No, absolutely not. I have sought their endorsement. A lot of people think that the Tea Party is radical, but it's not.
Absolutely not.
The Tea Party is all about liberty and freedom. What's radical about that?
Not a thing.
The Tea Party is about balanced budget and smaller government and constitutional government. There's nothing radical about that. Who's radical are the extremists that are trying to get us away from the Constitution. The radicals like the liberals and progressives, and Barack Obama and his minions in the White House with his czars, and that's who's radical. And those are the people that need to be reined in and held in check and held accountable. And that's not happening.
T and Tea Party stands for taxed enough already, by the way.
Absolutely.
And we are taxed enough already.
Too
We're
much.
overtaxed.
Too much.
We're overregulated. We have 47 million, maybe 48 million people now on food stamps. We have more people on Social Security disability than ever in the history of this country. It's going to reach a point where the people who are working, supporting the people who are not working, we're going to be outnumbered, and we're going to have to work even harder to support even more people who are not working.
Absolutely.
So that's not the American way. We need to restore the American way. And we need people to go to Washington who are going there for the American people, not for themselves.
Absolutely. And we need somebody who's in favor of term limits, and I am in favor of term limits, and I'm going to set the example. I'm going to run 2 terms. That's all I'm going to serve. And actually, when I interviewed with Club for Growth, they didn't like that. They were saying, no, you don't. If we're going to put money, if we're going to spend money on your campaign, we want you to stay there. And I said, nope. I believe in term limits, and I'm going to set the example. I'm going to serve 2 times, and I'm coming back to South Mississippi, and we're going to turn it over to somebody else. But I'm going to make sure that we have the way prepared for somebody else, like an Angela Hill or a Michael Watson, who will stand up and support the people in South Mississippi and not the party.
Well, in the old days, Ron, politicians were called statesmen because they went to Washington to represent the state, which is the people of the state. And they were not interested in being a career politician. They had jobs. They came back home and they went back to work after they went to Washington.
Absolutely.
And that's what we need more of. We need more people going to Washington, and we need a president in Washington who cares about the country. And the country is us.
Absolutely.
Without us, there is no country. Without us, there is no money. There is no way to run a government without the people who are working.
And that is the obligation of the federal government. The first thing in the preamble was to provide for the common defense. And they could start by securing the southern border.
Well, that's going to open another can of worms. Yes, I'll go ahead and ask it. Your views on immigration?
Well, I've got quite a bit I could say about that.
Okay.
We could probably do a show on that.
All right.
But one of the important things to understand about the immigration controversy is this: we have allowed the liberals to change the subject. The problem we have is border security. It's not about immigration. But they don't want to talk about border security. They want to talk about the immigration controversy, because now they can say, well, you can't be against immigration. After all, we're a nation of immigrants. Well, that's not the problem. We've got people sneaking across the southern border, come over here and commit crimes. They're smuggling in dope. They're terrorists that are coming across. There are some people coming across to work. We need to secure the southern border. That's what needs to happen first. The Simpson-Mazzoli bill that Reagan signed was supposed to secure the southern border, and they granted amnesty to several millions of illegals that were already here. But the federal government was supposed to secure the border, and the federal government was also to put a stop for people not here legally for getting jobs, and they didn't do that. They gave the illegals that were here got amnesty, but we didn't get a secure southern border, and we still have people getting jobs who are not documented. So we need to stop calling it an immigration controversy, because it has nothing to do with immigration. This is about border security. And, I think a lot of people could be talked into an amnesty provision if we were sure that we're not going to have to face this again in another 20 years. Because if we can close the border, and we can close the border, we can build a fence. North Korea can build a fence. Israel can build a fence. The communist bloc built a fence. Why can't we build a fence?
We can.
We absolutely can, and that's the way to start. And a fence would do a lot to control the crossing of our southern border. And then people who do get around it need to pay a high price.
But I think we also need to reform the process of immigration. I think it's become far too complicated, and people have to wait far too long, and they're not willing to do that anymore. I mean, you look at Ellis Island, people were coming in Ellis Island all the time. They were doing it legally. They were getting the proper paperwork, and they were here legally. And that did not have the bureaucratic mess that we've
have
got now.
Absolutely.
So that's one thing we really have to look at reforming, is the process by which somebody can come here and come here legally.
Absolutely, we do need to reform it. There's nothing wrong with having guest worker programs.
Not at all.
We could have people come here from south of the border, but we need to know who's coming here and what they're doing when they get here, how long they're going to stay here, and when they're going to go back home. We're not doing that now. But this is the problem with the federal government. The federal government needs to solve this, and if they want to change our immigration laws so that people can come here legally, so we know who is coming into this country and what they're going to do when they get here, then that's fine. But that's a problem in Washington, D.C. That's not even being discussed, let alone being addressed.
Right. Well, Ron, we're coming to the end of the show, and always at the end of the show, I afford the possibility for any candidate to look right over there in that camera and tell the people of the 4th Congressional District, the people who are watching this show now, why you want to go to Washington and be their representative in Washington.
You know, I was really discouraged a couple of weeks ago when I watched an interview on TV. They were interviewing the guy who doped up Alex Rodriguez. And the interviewer was just astounded that somebody would take part in a doping program that would violate the integrity of Major League Baseball. And I'm thinking, what? Why are we worried about Major League Baseball? What about the integrity of the federal government? Our president was given the award of Liar of the Year last year. What about the integrity of his administration? Somebody has to step up and do something. It's not happening now. And so that's what I want to do, is I want to go to Washington, D.C. and represent the people of South Mississippi. I want to take South Mississippi to Washington, D.C. I want to take our morals, our values, and our ideas to Washington, D.C. We have some good ideas here in South Mississippi. The representatives we have now too often think that their job is to bring Washington, D.C. to South Mississippi. We have too much Washington, D.C. and South Mississippi already. We need some flow in the opposite direction. I spent a lot of time in communist Czechoslovakia. I lived there, in fact, and I was in Prague when Václav Havel was elected the first free president the first president of a free Czechoslovakia. And Havel had to get out of prison, literally get out of prison, before he could take office as president of the Czech Republic as it is now. But I don't think anybody in Washington, D.C., at least in the Congress, has had to get out of jail before they could take office. What I do know, Doug, there's some flow in the other direction.
Okay. So, well, we appreciate your honesty in answering my questions. We appreciate your dedication to making this a better country.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me and giving me an opportunity.
We appreciate you making the trip down here.
Glad to be here.
I might say that there's an open invitation to anyone who is running for office here on this station, because we feel like this show can introduce you and inform the public as to how you feel about different things and how you want to represent them.
Absolutely.
So, Ron, it was a great pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much, Doug. I appreciate the opportunity.
And I look forward to seeing you again.
Okay, we'll be here.
And we look forward to seeing you again on another edition of Spotlight on Jackson County. Won't you join us then?